You're live.
Thanks, Hollis. Welcome everyone to the regular board meeting of the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission this evening. We have a call to order, and we've recorded everyone who is coming. I'm sure Claudette's got that. So I think we can say that we've got a quorum. I'd like to acknowledge our two visitors today, Kathleen Duguay from the Point Lepreau, and Corporal Jason Hansen, who will be giving us the RCMP second quarter report shortly. Before we move any further, conflict of interest declarations. Yep.
There's also Jason Allens I see from MB Power as well as a guest.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll be doing team effort with Kathleen.
Okay, thank you. Conflict of interest declarations. Does if you've all had a look at the agenda, is there anyone that has a conflict of interest that they would wish to declare at this point? Okay, none taken. Thank you. The adoption of the agenda, if you've all had a chance to look through the agenda for this evening, if I could have someone move that agenda be adopted as presented.
So moved.
Thank you, Winston. Could I have a seconder? I see Wayne with his hand up there. Wayne McQuarrie is a seconder. All those in favor of adopting the agenda as presented signify by remaining silent. Any opposed signify by saying nay. Thank you very much, everyone. Adoption of the minutes of October 28th, 2021. Everyone's had a chance to review those minutes. If there are no questions or comments on those minutes, could I have someone move that those minutes be adopted as presented?
No, move it.
Thank you, Dennis. Dennis has moved. Seconder.
I'll second it.
Okay. Thank you, Heather. Now that we've had moved and seconded, could I have all those that wish to approve the minutes as adopted or as presented signify by remaining silent? Anyone opposed or have any questions, comments, signify by saying nay. Okay. Minutes adopted. Thank you. Kathleen, you're our first presenter. If you would like to move forward on the Point Lepreau license renewal. I don't know, Kathleen, can you see everybody else that's on the, okay, because I was going to get them all to tell you who they were, but most people have their names up there anyway.
We're good.
So it's, yeah.
We're good, and I will ask for the list after, because what I want to do is make a copy of this presentation and send it to everybody so that you have a copy of it. So thank you so much. It's we were so excited when we got the call that we could get on this agenda, because you guys represent a lot of our key leaders in our communities around the Pro. And there's a lot of activities going on here at the station, especially with our application for license renewal. Very important to us. Is to be able to receive approval to continue to operate under the regulatory requirements. So what we want to share with you tonight is why we're applying for a 25-year license. What has been our station operation activities, and why we think we deserve to extend our operating license for this plant. So I'm going to turn it over to Jason. Jason is the Director of Regulatory and External Affairs, and he is responsible for the license renewal application for the station. So I'll turn it over to you, Jason, and he'll start with our safety message. One of the key of our nuclear safety cultures here, we always start our message and our messaging with our safety message. So go over to you, Jason.
You're muted, Jason.
Well, that's not the first time I've done that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Before I get started on the safety message, thank you very much for your time. I know, you know, it's valuable to us to be extended the invite from your board, and I really appreciate everybody's time. So we'll try to go through the slides expeditiously. I know you have a lot on your plate this evening to get through, but I really do appreciate your time and listening to us to tell you a bit about our story, because we do have a proud story to tell. So first off is a safety message. Wildlife and winter tires. It's that time of year where there's a lot of deer on the road, and winter tires in particular have been proven, you know, in testing to be safer on the road. So if it's at all possible, we just want to encourage everybody to make sure that you have winter tires on your car, and slow down a little bit this time of year and look out for the deer on the road. I know I've hit a deer, my wife has hit a deer, and I think everybody I know has hit one at one time or another. So it's definitely a threat out there. Next slide, please. This is just the outline of our presentation. We'll give a little bit of overview of what the station is. I'm sure you all know who we are and what we're about, but some more details, I guess, of the sort of inner workings of LaPro, and then specifically some topics around license renewal and why that's important to us and what we're trying to accomplish with this license renewal, which is different than previous ones. Next slide, please. Okay. So Point LaPro, this is a little bit of what we believe we are. We believe we're the foundation of our provincial power supply, and we do provide about 1/3 of the province's energy from within the province. At full power, we produce about 660 megawatts on the grid. We actually produce about 710 megawatts, but some of that is used for station service. And during the second fiscal quarter, we represent 63% of all of the net generation from MB Power. So, you know, we do understand the opportunity that's been provided to us from the province to be a significant foundational piece of our power supply in New Brunswick. Next slide, please. This is one area where, you know, we put a lot of effort and a lot of focus on quality, and it's around our qualified and competent workforce. I'm sure your family members, friends, and neighbors. I saw Glenn in there, Glenn Hawkins, who worked here for many, many years. So we really have a competent, highly trained workforce and some of those positions are certified through the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission with extensive training programs. And in particular note, 90% of our members that are at site are actually part of the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And that's a bit of an unusual statistic for a lot of power plants, where 90% of the members are in the union, and that all the members are in one union collectively. And we do value that and look to that to really show that we're one community at Point LaPro. There's no divide between management and workers or different unions. We really consider ourselves at LaPro as one large family. Next slide, please. This is a picture of some of our security force. So as you know, we do have a highly integrated security force. A lot of it came from the unfortunate events of 9/11, but we do have a well staffed and a well-trained and well-equipped security force on site 24/7. So there's always a security force on site every day of the year. And we do extensive training and have extensive partnerships with the RCMP, St. John Police Force, as well as the Canadian Forces. And this is just a picture of some of our actual security members in one of our armored vehicles that we do have at site. Next slide, please. Here's another visual of a couple of our ERT members. In the background is the reactor building right over their heads there, but these are two emergency response members. We do have a full on-site 24/7 emergency response team, including fire trucks and the regular fire equipment you'd see in from a fire response point of view. All of that workforce is highly trained. A lot of them are local people as well. But in addition, we have combined training with Musquash Fire Department and St. John as well. And we have agreements with both those organizations for mutual aid response in the event that we do have an unfortunate incident that we need help with. The next slide. This is a picture of our control room on the left, and on the right is a picture of EMO. So this picture is trying to signify that from an emergency preparedness point of view, no matter what happens at Point Lepreau, we're prepared from a control room point of view, but we're also prepared from a New Brunswick point of view to respond to any emergency or alert or any situation that we think warrants help from external to Point Lepreau. We do extensive drills and preparations within Point Lepreau and maintain a number of qualified staff that have dedicated jobs around being prepared in the event that there might be an emergency on site. Next slide. So with any nuclear power plant in the world, but in particular in Canada, there's a very extensive regulatory oversight. So the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is the federal organization that gives us our operating license. And they have a mandate to really intrusively inspect and assess our operations day to day and month to month and year to year. And the picture that's on screen is actually two of the on-site inspectors that are stationed here full time. So we have anywhere between 5 and 7 full-time Canadian nuclear safety inspectors at site. They're actually in an office building that's just outside my window here. And their full-time job is to assess our performance and try to turn over every rock and look for any areas that we are potentially blind to our performance and make sure that we're running the station, not just in compliance with the requirements, but also in the safest manner that we possibly can. Next slide, please. Safeguards and used fuel. So you might be surprised that we're going to talk a little bit about used fuel, but from a number of public organizations, what we do with our used fuel and our radioactive waste is very important to people, because sometimes there's some misconceptions around where all that waste is going. So we have this slide and a couple more that will just sort of signify, or I guess try to highlight what we do with our used fuel and our used radioactive waste and where it all is right now. So we do have an obligation to meet federal requirements around safeguards, which means being a containment, I guess, of the fuel from production to the station into the core and out, and we call that safeguards. And we do have requirements, like I said, that are federal, but also the International Atomic Energy Association has requirements for how we maintain that fuel. And we meet all those requirements and maintain a very quality program around used fuel and radioactive waste to make sure that we're operating the safest plant we can. So next slide will show a little more details. So if I move can you guys see that on your screen? You probably can, right? I was just trying to move my mouse to see if you could see, but if you look at the lower red circle, that encompasses the plant itself. So that's a sky view of Point Lepreau, and that's what we call the exclusion zone. That's sort of that round red area is the main area of the plant. But then just next to that, the red rectangular area is an area that's designated for use of the station. So it's within our protect area, like it's within the main gates. But that smaller yellow area in there is actually where we've designated and where we contain all of our used fuel and all of our radioactive waste. The reason we wanted to put this picture up is if you look at it from a size perspective, that yellow area is where we plan to maintain or plan to store all of our used fuel and our radioactive waste. But if you look within the yellow box, you'll see there's only about a quarter of it that we're actually currently using. The rest of it is area that we've designated for future use, but we're only using a very, very small footprint so far. Next slide, please. So this again is a different view of that same area. So at the tip of that white arrow, is that what was in that yellow box in the previous slide. And then in the inset picture is an actual zoom view of what's on that area. And it's a number of canisters that are concrete that we use to store our used fuel and all of our radioactive waste. And everything that we've produced on site, with a few minor exceptions, is currently stored right on site. And as you can see, really doesn't take up a very big footprint. There's a statistic that that is used sometimes in industry, that all of the fuel that's been used in Canada since the start of any nuclear station would fill 5 hockey rinks up to the top of the boards. So if you think of Bruce Power and OPG and Point Lepreau, over the last 40 years, all of that used fuel would fill 5 hockey rinks up to the boards, which is, in our opinion, a very small footprint. Next slide, please.
I think it's up to 7 now, Jason.
Is it 7 now? Thanks,
Yeah.
Kathleen. Yeah, I'm a little out of date, maybe getting old. So this is just another aerial view, so you can see, excuse me, sorry, a different bird's eye view, I guess, of the same area, and you can see all those concrete canisters. That is the extent of the area that we used for radioactive waste. Next slide, please. So an interesting thing about nuclear stations is what is the impact on our environment, and that is very important to us. We go to great lengths to make sure that any potential impact we have on the environment is very well understood and is mitigated, to make sure that we are working in harmony, I guess, with the environment around us. And one of the particular areas that we believe demonstrates that is the Monarch Butterfly. So you may have heard or may have seen in other presentations that the Monarch Butterflies have a migratory path from Mexico all the way up the east coast of North America. And along that pathway, there's certain migratory stopovers, let's say, that they will stop and complete a bit of a life cycle. So they'll stop at certain places on the coast, and the butterflies will lay eggs, which will hatch into caterpillars, and then those caterpillars will turn into butterflies, and they kind of repeat that life cycle at certain phases along the eastern coast. And they're very delicate creatures, and one of those migratory stopover places is right on Point Lepreau's grounds. So we have during the summertime and fall, we have a number of monarch butterflies that really either pass by us or stop and sort of complete that life cycle right on site. And again, right outside my window, we built a little milkweed area, because that's what they feed on primarily. But we built a little milkweed area, and they actually will stop over for a number of weeks and just kind of hang around and complete that life cycle of hatching new butterflies before they carry on their route down to Mexico. So it's pretty neat. And we believe that is, in some way, not symbolic, but sort of signifies that from an environmental point of view, we're really not doing any harm to the environment around us. Next slide, please. All right, so this is where I'm going to turn over to Kathleen to talk a little bit about First Nations and community engagement. So Kathleen, over to you.
Thank you, Jason. And we take pride as well to partner with the Naturalist Club. One of their Canadian initiative and study that they have is the bird migration as well. So we help them and sponsor them with that infrastructure here on site so that they can maintain those studies, and those studies are shared internationally with other folks in the industry or across the world that are interested in those kind of scientific data. So on the public disclosures, community engagement, and First Nation engagement, we have a strong program. We work with our First Nation communities around the province, and we also work with our community members. We have a community relation group, and we meet on a regular basis. We share information from safety, operation, environment, and any subject of interest that they have questions about. So part of our mandate is to ensure that if you have any interests or inquiries about any part of our station, not only that we are excited about talking about what we do, but we also are regulated to ensure that we answer questions to our public communities and key leaders, that you guys and ladies, to make sure that you have and you get answers to the questions that you may have. Next slide. So a lot of the time, we don't meet just in our boardroom here. 75% of Point Lepreau, as you know, is surrounded by water, which our fishers are key stakeholders for us. So we meet with them on a regular basis. They're part of our community relation group, but we also rely on them for some guidance sometimes when we have to do certain activities on the water. And we also invite them to participate to some of our studies that we do when it comes to thermal plume activities or studies that we do as part of our station operation regulatory requirements. And one of the things that we do as well is we try to participate as well. Like every year they have their first day of fishing. So we make sure we're there for them when they leave on their boat every fall. And it gives us a chance to really put a face for them to the people that works behind the fence here. And security works closely with them, as well as our emergency response team, so that they support each other if there's any requirements that brings us to that. Back over to you, Jason, to continue on the license application there.
Thank you, Kathleen. Next slide, please. Okay, so we're just going to start a small section here on Point Lepreau and our license renewal, and maybe share some facts with you that we think would probably be interesting to you, but also that we're a little bit proud of. Next slide, please. Okay, so just from an overview point of view of our station license, we're independently regulated by the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, as I mentioned. So they're a federal organization in Ottawa, and their mandate is to assess the safety of any nuclear station, or really any organization that uses nuclear substances, and issue licenses as required. So our commitment so far is that we meet and exceed all regulatory requirements, and always have, to be honest. That's sort of a fundamental piece of running a nuclear station in Canada, that you abide by your license. But in the third bullet, we're actually seeking something different for this license renewal than we have in the past, which is a 25-year license. Typically, well, I shouldn't say typically, sorry, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, the regular license was a 5-year interval, and they've moved to a 10-year license period a number of years ago. But in recent past, the regulatory framework that they regulate under, and also our station performance, continues to improve and improve and improve, because every year the CNSC is trying to get better, we're trying to get better, and the rigor and the safety standards continue to evolve and continue to improve, which really brings us to a place where we believe that a 25-year license would be appropriate for our performance and appropriate for the CNSC's regulatory oversight, and would really demonstrate that we operate a safe station and that we have long-term plans for it. So I guess we'll go next slide, please. So from a timeline point of view of our application, we filed our application in June, which is a requirement to file an application 1 year ahead of the actual license. But then the first real formal public commission meeting is in January, and that's typically in Ottawa, but this year, because of COVID, it's going to be on Teams meeting, actually, or Zoom. It'll be virtual meeting, and that's the first meeting where the CNSC will come and give their perspective on our application and give a recommendation for whether we should or should not have a license renewal. And we'll at the same time give our presentation, which really summarizes what we already have in the application, but we will summarize why we think we run a safe station and why we should have a license renewed. And then the second part is in May, and that'll be in St. John in person. And that's an opportunity for anybody from the public, which are called interveners. So anybody in the public can take part in that hearing and either say things positive for Point Lepreau or negative for Point Lepreau, depending on what their perspective is on nuclear power or how we run our station. And the commission will basically interrogate any of those interventions to see if there's merit in what people are bringing forth. And then the commission will take away all that information from those two hearings and from our application, and they'll issue us a decision by June 30th, 2022, which is when our license expires right now. And the last bullet on the slide really just demonstrates that there's a lot of opportunities for the public to participate, and we really value that. We really want people's opinions, and not just good opinions. We really want anybody who has any concerns or any interest in Point Lepreau to reach out to us. Next slide, please.
Jason, I just have a question there, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So when you talk about the 25-year license, over the years, like standards and codes change and expectation change. So from a CNSC perspective, they will continue to do their independent monitoring and oversight, but we also have our regulatory reporting that takes place every year, correct?
That's correct, yeah. So it's a good point, Kathleen. We do have, the CNSC does an annual report every year on the performance of nuclear stations in Canada. And they present that report publicly, and they're doing it this year on December 15th. And that report is a very intrusive, in-depth summary of each of the nuclear plants in Canada and how their performance was throughout their year, what challenges they might have had, and whether they're really complying with the license requirement, or whether they're exceeding license requirements and really striving for world-class excellence. And in addition to that, I'll add too that we have a requirement as part of having any license in Canada to review all of the modern codes and standards, basically look at all of the world power plants and the very best practices that are being adhered to out there from a safety point of view, and assess which of those we can abide by and which of those would bring value to us as a station to implement to really continue to improve our station and try to make it safer and safer every year. So I'm glad you brought that up, Kathleen, because that's two real key points of why we're confident that we can run a safe station, and why we believe that a longer license renewal period than we previously had is really the right thing to do. It's it's a demonstration of our commitment to safety. And this last slide, which is the last slide of our presentation, the title is Openness and Transparency, and we just want to summarize a few points that part of what is one of our values at the station is openness and transparency. We don't want to hide anything. We want anybody to be able to access any information that they would like to have on how we operate. We welcome people to come take tours of the station. We have public information sessions, and we really value opportunities like we're having right now tonight to be able to talk to people in our community and public to explain how we run our station and some of the highlights, and why we think that the safety continues to be the #1 priority for us. So that's really all we have for a presentation. We wanted to keep it sort of short and sweet and cover the highlights, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. If you had any really tough questions, we'll send those to Kathleen, but if you have anything you'd like to ask, fire away.
Do you mind giving an update on the outage, Jason, while we're at it?
Oh yeah, sure. Yep. So so we are in the second week of the outage, and we two of the reasons why we shut the station down, you may or might not know, but one of the reasons was a fuel machine, which we had some operational challenges. We resolved those on the fuel machine, and there was a concrete cooling fan that provides cooling to one specific area of the reactor that we wanted to replace before winter because it was giving us some challenges, and we have replaced that. And the third issue was our station service transformer, which brings power in from the grid and powers a lot of our key processes in the station. We had some challenges with the oil on that, so we've resolved that as well. So the three main issues why we shut down have been resolved, and now we're just in the process of the final equipment adjustments that we need before we can proceed with run up.
So you couldn't do those when the plant was running, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so that all three of those examples were equipment that when the station is normally running are either energized or we don't have access to, so we couldn't physically get to them to do the work. So that's why we had to shut down. And I should say that we're ready to run up, but it's Glenn would know this. It's a long process to run a nuclear plant up, so it's not like it's going to be run up tonight. We're still probably another week away, let's say, before we're run up. It's a long process, but we want to take our time, make sure we do it right. So does anybody have any questions, or was there anything that I covered a big ground pretty quick there, but was there anything that I said that was confusing to anyone, or anything that you have any questions on?
I guess I'll just make a comment. I guess the mayor, the mayor of McAdam is the chair of our board, and I just don't know if he recognized anybody that was in the presentation, because Heather Davis, the rep from the CNSC, grew up in McAdam. So
I didn't know that.
yeah, so her father was RCMP there, and Dean McIntyre is the shift supervisor there.
Yeah, that was Heather in the picture on the slides.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So she's the on-site rep from CNSC.
Okay. Nice. Thank you. Any questions
I
for
have one.
Jason and Kathleen? Yeah, Winston.
It just, when you showed the storage of the spent uranium, is it always kept above ground or
Yes.
is it buried in?
Yeah, the spent uranium is in the fuel bundle. So when it comes out of the core, it's in a zirconium metallic bundle. And we after we keep it cool for 7 years underwater, we actually take that bundle and put it a bunch of them into a basket, and then we lower those into the top of the concrete canisters, and they're always maintained above ground. Part of the reason to maintain them above ground is the radioactivity. By the time they're in the pool for 7 years, they're cool and the radioactivity is a lot lower. So it's safe to have them above ground. But one of the key aspects, or sort of one of the key reasons why above ground is a safe way to store it, is we have monitoring in the ground around those canisters. And we do routines all the time to make sure that the ground around the canisters is not experiencing any impact, which is a little harder to do if they're buried in the ground.
This is what the fuel bundle is.
Oh,
This is what it looks like.
Yeah.
This is where the fuel and uranium is in, and then that's what we put inside the reactor.
Wow.
This one is a fresh one. It's not the one that's been in the reactor.
That's probably a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brian, you had a question?
I had a question for Jason. What's the cost to produce a kilowatt at LaPro, say compared to Mactaquac, which is going through a multi-billion-dollar retrofit right soon? Just
Yeah,
curious about the relative costs of power.
geez, that's a good question. I don't actually have that number from a relative point of view. Kathleen, do you know that off the top of your head?
I don't, but I'm gonna take an action to get back to you on it. I just need the name of the gentleman's name that asked the question. I didn't get that.
It's Brian Glebe. Brian Glebe.
Hi, Brian.
Hi.
I'll get back to you on that tomorrow, if that's okay.
I'd appreciate that. I'm doing some work at the Mactaquac fish hatchery, which is just down below Mactaquac.
Right.
And I know there's going to be renovations starting soon at Mactaquac. And I always wondered what the relative cost of hydropower was to nuclear. And
Yeah.
nobody can really answer that for me. I've been
Yeah.
looking for that.
It's a good question. It
Sometime.
may be a complicated answer because with Mactaquac, as you know, in the spring, right, when spring fresh, it's at maximum capacity. The rest of the year, it's at a lower capacity, right? So the answer may be a bit of a complicated one to sort of average that out throughout the year, where LaPro is base load, right, every day. But we'll get you an answer for sure.
I appreciate that. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I have a question.
Yep, Dennis has a question here.
Could the answer to that come out to everybody here at the board, on the board?
Certainly.
Definitely, yeah.
We may be generating our own power at Hemlock Knoll using methane. Just that's a joke, Hollis, actually.
Kathleen or Jason, I'm not sure which, but what is the economic benefit of going from a 10-year to a 25-year license renewal?
Sure, I can answer that one. The economic benefit, the license renewal process, if we went back, let's say 30 years, the license renewal process has a lot of interactions between the CNSC Commission and the station around what our plans are for the next 5 years, what our safety case is, how we would do it from a performance point of view. And the way the industry is developed, all of those sort of pieces that used to be done on license renewal time are really now done continuously. So we have an annual report that I mentioned is being presented on December 15th from the commission. That report now is so detailed and so intrusive on our performance that it really gives the CNSC commission and the public a scorecard and a basically a safety report every year of how we're doing. Whereas 30 years ago, you wouldn't get that at all. So the 5-year license renewal would almost be that sort of a performance check in how are things going. Are all the safety requirements being made? Are they complying with the requirements? So all of the sort of pieces of what used to be in license renewal is being done continuously now, year to year or month to month, including more inspectors on site, including much higher requirements for stations from a quality program and safety point of view. So the requirements on what our obligations are as a licensee over the last 20 years are monumentally different. I should say monumental, but significantly different than they were before. So the whole framework of what a license renewal is has really changed a lot. And in a way, though, other countries have been doing this for years. Like other countries in Europe will issue, when a nuclear station starts, they get a license for 30 or 40 years. In the US, when stations are started, they get a license for life. So if their original life was 40 years, then they would get a 40-year license, right? So other countries have been doing this. It just took, I think, a while for Canada to get up to speed on what the rest of the countries have been doing, right? So to boil it all down, all of the sort of intrusiveness and safety checks that used to be part of the actual license renewal is now being done every year.
Thank you.
Could I ask one more question?
Sure.
Jason, is there a place for small reactor use in New Brunswick? You know, you see so much about in the news about small reactor development, and New Brunswick is part of that development process. How would they be used, or is there a place for their use in New Brunswick?
Yeah, that's a good question. So definitely, I should qualify this. I'm not a small modular reactor expert, but I do know my way around them a little bit. So, some of the advantages of the small modular reactors is they're scalable in size from, down from a few megawatts, like 5 megawatts that you might need to run a community or a mining operation in particular, to up to 300 megawatts, which is almost half of Point Lepreau, right? So there's flexibility in how big of the plant is. So one of the advantages of that is you could put one up north and you could put one on northeast, right, and cover different areas of the province with small modular reactors and scale it to the size that you're trying to cover. Another big advantage of small modular reactors is they're a very simple design. And so from a safety point of view, the nuclear industry has taken everything we've learned over the last, 60, 70 years of nuclear power and used that to develop newer designs that are simpler to build and simpler to maintain, right? So there's an advantage from a safety point of view and also from an economic point of view of going to these, modular type of reactors, right? The word modular is kind of like a misnomer. It's not really a modular. It just was trying to signify that it's a scalable design that we could standardize a little more.
I'd like
So
to
we
add
would-
to that can I just add to that as well? The other thing too with that, Jason, is that with the small modular reactor, you can pull them off the grid and put them on the grid. So when it marries very well with the windmills and the wind and the solar. So when it's not sunny and when it's not windy, then you can put more charge onto the grid. And then when
right.
it's sunny and windy, then you pull them off, right? And
right.
you would have also a battery storage to support some of that.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Point Lepreau can't go up and down. It just runs steady at 600 megawatts. That's the difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
good point, Glenn.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Kathleen and Jason, for coming and briefing us today. It was very interesting. A lot of good information there for leadership within the community. And so I just want to say thank you very much for doing that for us. Appreciate it.
I really appreciate your time. Thanks for the opportunity. If any of you want to come to Lepreau, come on anytime.
Okay.
So
May take you up on that.
Sure.
I just want to repeat my action to follow up is I'm going to send a copy of this presentation that we delivered tonight. And I'm also going to do a follow up on the cost of kilowatt per hour for the energy produced from Point Lepreau and the energy produced from Actiquac, correct?
Yes, I think that was it. If you could send those to Hollis, that would probably be best.
Yes,
And then
that's
we-
what I'm going to do. And then he can, yeah.
And he can.
So I want, like, the other piece too is, I mean, this is just a snapshot of what we do, right? There's a lot more that probably is most of interest of every one of you in the room that you may have most of an interest in this area. The other thing I want to share as well is the Nuclear Waste Management Organization has been out and engaging with people in New Brunswick as well about the long-term storage of our used fuel. So you may be invited to participate to some of those discussions as well. They've been very active on that lately, and they will be coming to New Brunswick and reaching out to get your opinion, your insights on for the long-term storage of the fuel. So I just want to give you a heads up on that. And January is when we're going to be going in the front of the CNSC for the license renewal. And we'll probably be reaching out to you folks to ask and invite you if you would support us for our license renewal. And we can have more discussion on that later on in the year. But anytime, like if some of you wants to come here and see how we do things to bring more clarity, show you the landscape of where our used fuel is stored, we're happy to do that. And some of the feedback we got from the folks that came is it helps put things in perspective, and it may also bring other questions that you may have that you wouldn't have thought of asking until you see it. So thank you, and thank you again for having us.
Thanks,
Thank you very
everyone.
much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we'll turn it now over to Corporal Jason Hanson for the RCMP second quarter report.
Hello, can everybody hear me?
We hear you here in the boardroom.
Hi, thank you. My name is Corporal Brent Allaby, and I'm filling in for Jason tonight. He couldn't make it. I'm here. Is that all? Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Does everybody have the, I'm assuming everybody has the Rtp Quarterly Report. I can just run over it quickly. I won't take a lot of your time up. One thing I want to bring to everybody's attention, I see when you look at it, it's kind of amazing how year to year, how consistent our calls for service are. When you look at last year's, 2,555 and this year's 2,567. So, an increase by 12 files. It's amazing because last year, of course, through the pandemic, a lot of calls for service decreased because of, everybody staying home and being quarantined. But that was made up for by pandemic calls, such as the Quarantine Act calls we had to get. So, in the report, every town will have its individual breakdown of individual calls for service from last year to this year. I won't go through town to town or through the accident reports or anything. That's all in the report. One thing I wanted to bring to everybody's attention was a call of quite a magnitude for us here, especially in the eastern part of Charlotte County. On August 19th, Paul Dowdy of Musquash went missing, reported missing by his family. And September 1st, his car was located by our helicopter in a wooded area in Penfield at the end of a logging road. What followed was 3 days of full ground search and rescue, searching from radiating out from where the car was found. We had helicopters, drones, police dogs. Another full day of ground search and rescue came in, and there was 24 additional files because we did a press release, and of course the public calls in and generates files that we have to investigate. So after 3 months, we still don't know where Mr. Dowdy is. So if anybody has any information, please call Crime Stoppers or your RCMP. Another one I wanted to bring to your attention is the increase in theft of catalytic converters. I don't know if you've seen it on the news a lot. It's becoming, just really started here in the last year, and it seems to be increasing month by month. And it's driven by the price of a small rare metal in the catalytic converters called palladium. In 2016, the price of it was around $70 an ounce US, and right now it's around $2,000 an ounce. So it's technically more valuable than gold is right now. I think gold's around $1,700. So once the criminal element gets that information, then of course catalytic converter, someone with a portable Sawzall can slide under a truck or a car and in 5 minutes detach your exhaust system and cash it in at a salvage yard for $300 or $400 and higher, depending on the type and make of the the car that it comes off of. And of course, it's very hard to combat that because you leave a car parked somewhere in the middle of the night, and in the morning you wake up and your exhaust is gone. And also, when you look at the quarterly report, which I think is good news, the top 10 occurrences, Quarantine Act, false alarms, assistance to the public, all 10 of them, there are no violent crimes in the top 10, no major thefts or incidents. Our top 10 is all important stuff, but not, at least we don't have a lot of victims or a lot of violence. And you'll see number 7 on there is Mental Health Act, which we've seen quite a large increase over the last 2 years, most likely due to the pandemic and drug use and addiction. Now, I could go on, but if anybody has any questions, I could just leave it with that.
Okay. Thanks, Brent. Is there any questions for Brent from board members?
I have a question about, if I may.
Yes, John. Yeah.
In 2 previous contacts that I had with RCMP as mayor with the council, there was some concern about gangs, I don't know how to pronounce it correct, moving to New Brunswick with speed and amphetamines. Is that something that we should worry about?
Sorry, my phone's a little scratchy. What was the concern?
The concern was that there is evidence that organized crime is trying to move in New Brunswick with speed, amphetamines, methamphetamines. Is that something that we should know more about?
Well, that is something, yes, we should be concerned about because we do see an increase in meth and something like that does tend to come from organized crime because it's apart from Breaking Bad, it's not easy to set up a meth factory. So yes, that is a concern for us, and we're seeing it now in Charlotte County. 2 years ago, we never saw crystal meth, but now we're getting files, and it goes hand in hand with the mental health calls. Drug addicts, particularly who have maybe a mental illness, and they get on crystal meth, and they become very unpredictable, and it just accentuates their mental illness, and that's why a lot of calls are from mentally ill, essentially drug addicts. But yeah, it is a concern for us. Yes, it is.
Yeah, just to follow up on my point, the fact that the RCMP is a national force does not give you an advantage with regards to tackling this problem in New Brunswick.
An advantage?
I mean, you have the intelligence all over Canada, so essentially there is cross-border things and all that. I'm saying that because we continuously evaluate the RCMP role in New Brunswick. So being a national police force, that does not give you a bit of an edge to a local force on what is going on with organized crime?
Well, I wouldn't say locally. Nationally, yes, it would. But locally, we probably have just the same obstacles as St. John PD and Canada Cases Regional would have. Being frontline police officers here on the ground, we don't have a lot of control over the border issues or international trafficking. That's more of a federal mandate. But it's a concern for everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could go, yes, Corporal Alaby, thanks for joining us this evening. A quick question is, obviously, we know across the country, in any industry, but certainly the RCMP, that there's worker shortage, people shortage, turnover, and then obviously the RCMP, a lot of people, for numerous reasons, are out on leave. I was wondering what the current regional staffing looks like. Is there many vacancies that are impacting either bringing in officers from other areas or gaps in our policing model?
Yes, there have been, and especially in the last couple of years as well, as you know, there's a lot of worker distribution, people leaving and moving on. We do have a program where our ODS members, our off-duty sick members, are being replaced now with other members from other areas coming in. So if you work in St. Stephen or St. George or Macadam, you'll see an increase of unfamiliar faces, and they're the people that we were bringing in to fill those spots. We've had 2 new members arrive in St. Stephen in the end of the summer. There's one due at Christmas time, and there's another member coming to St. George, I believe, in the first of the year. And outside of this 3 months, I can't say how the staffing is from that. But yeah, like every workforce everywhere, there's always challenges to keep the positions filled, keep the people healthy. Co-workers get older and they end up taking up with health issues. So yeah, it's a challenge. We're trying our best here to keep as many people on the road as we can.
Thank you. I feel for you for sure.
Any other questions? Well, Corporal Albee, you're getting away late tonight. Thank you very much for coming and speaking to us about the second quarterly report.
Thank you very much, and thank you for keeping it light. I appreciate that.
Okay. Talk to you later, Brent.
Night.
Brian, were you having trouble getting a question in?
I did.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. It was just relevant to, I noticed this 30% increase in response to mental health associated calls. And I just wondered if there's any upgrading of training to the RCMP members to deal with mental health calls. I don't think so. And I think it's a very important part of their job going forward with the pandemic and even with, drug associated mental health issues. Anyway, that was my question. And I'll ask again some other time.
Okay, thanks, Brian. We'll move on to business arising from the previous minutes. The first item we have is a motion to repeal version 7.9 of Rrc Bylaws and replace it with version 8.0. This motion was brought to us last month and given us a heads up as to what we were going to be looking at today. And with that intro, I'm going to hand it over to Dennis.
As you know, we give you a notice of motion last meeting, and I'd like to make a motion now that we repeal version 7.9 of the Rrc Bylaws and replace it with version 8.0.
If there are no questions or comments, could I have someone second that motion? Winston seconded. I'm sorry, I don't get a chance to look at you. I don't know whether you're seconding anything matter or not, Jim. My apologies to you. I got my back to you. All those in favor of the motion signify by remaining silent. All those who opposed signify by saying nay. Thank you very much. Motion passed. Did you have anything else, Dennis? That was it.
That's it.
The next item that we had was the Regional Health Planning Committee, appointment of members and the first meeting details. As you'll recall from our last meeting, it was requested that we set up an ad hoc committee. We were going to look at the strategy for planning of healthcare personnel recruitment and retention for this area. We had a number of people who had volunteered, Al McEachern, myself, Wayne McQuarrie, John Dedorakis, Heather Hatt, Richard Corey, Bonnie Morse, and Wade Greenlaw. So those were the 8 names that had been submitted. And we need, is there anyone else? I don't want to cut anybody off if they were thinking that they would like to join us. But we need to have a motion to accept those 8 members to initiate this ad hoc committee. Wayne? You're muted, Wayne. You had your hand up, but
I'll make the motion.
okay, Wayne would make the motion that these 8 names be moved as to becoming ad hoc committee members. A seconder?
I'll second.
Okay, Heather, thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by remaining silent. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Thank you very much, everyone. We would like to suggest that the first meeting be held on Thursday, December 2nd at 6 p.m. by Zoom. Do any of those 8 members have a problem with that?
Which day is again?
That's Thursday, the 2nd of December, John.
Next Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just next Thursday, yeah.
Okay.
And we'll get Hollis to set up the meeting by Zoom.
Okay.
Okay, the purpose of that first meeting, we should be selecting a chair, define the terms of reference, and this will come out in an email to you. Select target dates for milestones, and then roughly look at the budget, which was 25,000 allocated in the. Any questions on the Regional Health Planning Committee? You're smiling over there, Winston. What do you got?
Definitely no. Definitely no.
And motion to accept, but before we move into that, I'll let Hollis speak to that item. Hollis, you're muted.
Something.
Can't hear you.
No, Hollis, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
A little better.
You ready?
No,
Can't hear you again.
no, we can't hear you, Hollis.
Holler loud, we can probably hear you.
Is that any better?
Yeah, that's much better.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I'm
Getting
sorry. I missed that last little bit for whatever this connection problem was I had, but I think it was our satellite. We switched. I don't know what happened, but anyway, would you mind repeating what you said there at the very end?
That was on the, I just talked a little bit about the suggested agenda for the first meeting. I mentioned those 5 or 6 points. And then I advised the committee members of this ad hoc committee that you would be sending out an email with the suggested agenda items and also the timing for the Zoom meeting.
Okay. Yep. No problem. No problem.
So what we're looking at now is the Wall Street property. And I was asking that you speak to that, Hollis.
Oh, okay. Yep. No problem. I'm going to share my screen here. So I had a lot of interest in this RFP. It was downloaded well over 200 times, the actual RFP documents. A lot of people, I had a few phone calls and things like that about it, but in the end, there was only actually one solid proposal, but thankfully it's a fairly solid proposal. So I'm going to just share that without getting into the details of who, because you haven't approved it here yet, and we're not in a closed session. So without getting into that, I'm going to share with you the details of the meat of the proposal. So what the applicant has proposed is a 2-story, 10-unit apartment building. Each of the apartments would be a 2-bedroom. They come with 3 appliances and wash and dryer hookups. Each one has a heat pump of its own and electric baseboard heat. So each unit has its own electric meter and water meter. The design of the building, I'll show you a couple of sketches of it here in a minute, is that there's no internal hallways or basement or anything like that. They save a lot of space this way. It's just less that has to be maintained, so it can keep the cost down. And if it's built on a slab, they avoid any basement issues like flooding or moisture, those types of things. The concept is that without hallways, that everybody has an outside entrance to their apartment, and it's a 2-story walk-up with parking. Most of this I just kind of flipped to you. They're going to do a little bit of landscaping there. So I'll just show you quickly a sketch of the concept here. So like I said, it's a over under. Each apartment is exactly the same. They're all 2-bedroom. They went with 2 bedrooms because that was the most saleable, the most seemed to be in the most demand. Just a bit of an overview of what that lot would look like with this building on it, with 10 parking spots plus another 4 additional for, I'm presuming, visitors or things like that. There's 10 apartments, so 10 parking spots. Everybody gets a parking spot. What the layout looks like, they are 23 by 42. As I said, 2 bedrooms, so like 900 square feet, 1 bath. It's a pretty functional layout. And so when they're laid on top of each other, this is kind of what they look like. And sorry about that.
Brent, it sounds like you're not muted.
Yeah. So anyway, they estimate they're going to start they'd like to start construction in May of 2022, which means we have a little bit of rezoning and a couple things to do before that happens. And they would like to have it ready for tenants to move in next fall. So that is that's the gist of the proposal. As I said, it's the only one that came in, but the proponents are very solid people. They own several other properties. They've done this before. This isn't their first rodeo. So it looked pretty good. I would want where you want to go from here is to either give me a motion to accept this and move forward with this proposal, or if you want more and more details about who they are and things like that, we'd have to do that in closed session.
I'll make a motion that we accept the proposal.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to accept the proposal. Do we have a
I'll
second?
second it.
Dennis has a second on it. Is there any questions, comments before we go to the vote?
Yeah, just a quick question, if I may. As someone who's been doing some RFPs lately as a municipality, I'm just ensuring that there's no additional ask by the developer. It seems like in addition to land, they're also looking for help with bringing in services and things like that. Is this just a straight up exchange, or is there any additional ask that you can disclose outside of closed session?
No, there's no additional ask from us. However, we are going to sort of voluntarily assist them with CMHC application for funding. So, that's just something we would do anyway. So we'll go down that route. This is an interesting, when I do the sale, because the sale is for $1, But there's covenants attached to this, so we have to make sure that the performance of the contract is there, so I'm obviously going to get a lawyer involved with drawing up, because it's going to be a unique sale agreement, whereas we're selling it for $1, but only on the condition that you do what you say you're going to do.
And just a follow-up question on that, if I may, Mr. Chair. I was wondering, is the development agreement going to be what really negotiates the fact that since the developer is getting it for $1, that they are truly making it affordable housing? Like, how do we protect that the purpose of giving the land for $1 is exactly what they're going to deliver, and 3 years from now they don't up the rent to $2,000 a month per se?
Well, it's a good point, Mayor Henderson, but they have in their, I didn't show you all of the financial proposals and stuff, so it's in there. But that is a good thing to note, to make sure that is included in the sale agreement and the covenants that go with that, I think.
Ghislaine?
It says that it's on Wall Street. Where is it? Can we find out that information?
It's directly across the street from our office. Right on the corner, like right across from Lincourt Manor, basically.
Okay, okay, all right.
There was one other person I think had their hand up. John, you're muted though, John.
You're muted.
John, you're muted. You're mute. John, you're muted.
Hello.
There you go.
Yeah, okay.
Now we can hear you.
Okay. We are going through a similar process here in St. George for the construction of a 30-unit apartment. And I just wanted to ask you if in the RFP that you put out, you had included a day for the project start and a date for the project completion.
We had, it depended on what the project was, but they included in their proposal to us what their dates were. So they'd like to shovels in the ground May and done in September, and that's in their proposal.
So that's a binding term on them essentially. Yep. At the end. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good questions. Anything else?
Yes,
Okay. Sorry, Sam. Yeah.
But just a quick question. I'm assuming that the town of St. Stephen is on board and in agreement with this. So I just want to make sure there's no conflicts, that if we say it's okay to go ahead tonight and then they're held up for some other reason with the town. So is everybody on the same page here?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, we've been back and forth with Jeff and council there. Ghislaine, you may or may not have heard that there in council, but we've certainly been back and forth a lot with CAO there, and they had no problems with it whatsoever. So the only thing is, it is going to have to go through, it has to be rezoned, because right now that is R2. So there is that process to go through. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks.
Okay. So we have a motion on the floor to accept this developer's proposal. And we have a seconder. We'll go to the vote. All those in favor signify by remaining silent. Anyone opposed may signify by saying nay. Motion passed. Thank you very much, everyone. Is there anything else under business arising from previous minutes? Okay. We'll move on then to new business. The only thing I have under new business right now is our December special meeting, which will deal with local governance reform. I know there's a lot of discussion, or a lot of people have, feelings or comments, ideas about local governance reform. But rather than get into it in any amount of time here this evening, I think all of us would appreciate it if we just kept it to that special meeting, and that will be the only item for discussion. There was two two dates that we had put forward. One of them was Wednesday, December 8th, or Tuesday, December 14th. And it will be at the Algonquin Hotel. Meal will be provided. And COVID rules will apply, and you'll have to have a proof of vaccination in order to attend. So the tentative dates, does anybody have any conflict with either of those dates? Wednesday, December 8th, or Tuesday, December 14th?
I have a conflict with December 8th. I prefer December 14th.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a conflict with the 8th as well. 14th would work better for me.
Okay, I have a couple of folks with conflicts on the 8th.
Same here. The 14th is better for me personally.
Okay.
Can
Okay,
I just
why
ask what the timing of the meeting is, just for travel purposes, if we're doing in person?
Well, what time did you want to have that start, Hollis?
I was thinking 6 p.m., same as this.
Would that be okay?
Yep,
Okay.
I think I can make that work. Thanks.
Okay, thanks,
But I
Bonnie.
have to stay all night, Bonnie.
At the Algonquin, that's going to be a real trial, I got to tell you.
They've got a nice water slide.
Okay, so let's shoot for the December Tuesday at 6 p.m. And hopefully by then we'll have a little more detail on the local governance reform. And we'll try and get Hollis to have a little more information for us. And we'll discuss that at further length. Thank
Can
you,
I ask
everyone.
one question, please?
Yeah.
One question for my information.
Or John.
I'm just wondering if there are any, I heard that there is a plan to have this thing over in terms of, I guess, voted by the end of December. So I just want you to confirm that and to understand if there is any scope for meaningful feedback in the meantime, and when is the cutoff period?
Yeah, go ahead, Hollis.
My understanding is that you're correct, that it's going to be introduced in December in legislature. I don't know what the exact date is. I've had a couple of meetings, as you might imagine. Well, I've had several with different people. All the information that I have is you have it right now. Prior to December 14th, that actually works out well because there's an executive director's 2-day meeting just prior, and I'm also going to be meeting with ESIC on this Friday with the rest of the regions and us about what that's going to mean for, because that's part of the reforms as well. So I hopefully have a little more information December 14th, but you're right, Mayor Dedorakis, it's possible that we'll be there after they vote on it in legislature. I'm not sure. You would have to ask, you'd probably get better information out of your MLA on that than me.
Okay.
Through that follow-up question on that, is there could be potentially risk where we're meeting and the decision's already been finalized, right? So we might have to be a little bit flexible if we get any indication that it will be passed in advance.
Sure. Yeah.
We can, yeah, we'll let Hollis keep his ear to the ground. And if things look like they're gonna move faster than we are, we'll try and be flexible and modify our date. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Brad. Okay. Anything else under new business anybody would like to bring up? Then we'll move over to the committee and staff reports. The first one is Hollis with the executive director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have my report in your package there. Nothing earth-shattering in solid waste. We are tracking just as we have been. They're preparing stuff for winter now. We're stockpiling gravel. We're getting ready as much as we can to get cell 12 construction underway as quickly as possible next year. We're not going to be in trouble here, but it does need to get done, you know, as soon as we can get it done, just to have some comfort level in the time there. I attended a solid waste management strategic action plan draft meeting on Tuesday this week, myself and Mike Young. And it was an all-day thing, and it was with all the other regions and all the other solid waste directors. So the province is trying to put together a new policy for solid waste in the province. And they want this in place by end of fiscal, so end of March next year. There's a lot of interesting things that they're talking about. A lot of it had to do with waste diversion. Their targets are to go from 600 kgs per person, which where we currently are, to 490 kgs per person by 2030, and then to 350 kgs per person by 2040. So they do that by talking about different types of diversion. One of them was talking about quite a bit. We are questioning that one fairly hard because where I don't see a benefit is and my sentiments are echoed by the other regional service commission executive directors and solid waste directors for the large part, with the exception of a couple. We don't really want to go down the road of municipal collection of compost. So it's curbside composting. That's what they do in Nova Scotia and some other places like that. And I question the benefit of it, considering what the cost of that would be. So it didn't sound like, you know, they were going to force that. So that's a good thing. Nothing, and I asked the specific question, is there any legislation coming out after the end of March with respect to solid waste in the province? And the answer was no, unless it's, you know, certain pieces that happen down the road. So they're still very much talking about different ideas and topics. So anyway, it was an all-day thing, but it was good, and I think they're listening. They've rearranged the department. ELG has rearranged so that they have solid waste diversion branch with that has its own staff now. So that's who we were dealing with there. So that was the big news there. Rest of my report, planning flat out as normal. We had a record week in October for building permits, which is unheard of. It just has not slowed down, but we are handling it. We've decided on the platform we're going to build out our internal online system. So we have online building permits, and then that goes to an internal process which is much more efficient than what we do now. So that should increase our efficiency dramatically. And the online map we talked about there last month is going to be a live thing, hopefully by the end of this year. So it's as we get permits, they're updated. And the other news, the other thing that's been taking up most of my time has been local governance reform, as you can probably imagine. So just a few tidbits of what I know at this point in time is that there's going to be a transition person or team assigned to us mid-January to help through, you know, the rest of the year. That transition, not just Regional Service Commission, but I'm assuming that this is the same team that would help all the municipalities change into whatever their ultimate form takes. We are going to have an expanded mandate starts in January 2023. That's economic development, tourism, community development, regional transportation, and recreation. So we're already partway down the road on a lot of these fronts, especially with recreation. I think we're going to hit the ground running on this. And, you know, I think if we can take a positive outlook on this part of it and the expansion of our services, I think we can do really well. There's going to be a requirement for a public safety committee. So that's not just policing, but that's fire protection, EMO, and all kinds of things. So we'll have to kind of do some work over the next year to figure out what that exactly looks like and what, you know, what the province would like to see accomplished with that and what we'd like to see accomplished with that. As you know, our boundaries are going to change. currently the map shows that Harvey and LSD Manor Sutton will be combined into a new municipal unit and will be part of RSC 11, which is now going to be called the Capital Region Service Commission. However, we are gaining Musquash, and Musquash La Pearl, we're going to be combined into a different kind of municipal unit. So that's exciting. There is going to be municipal elections and by-elections next November. And that's only for those that have, see some changes. So for our region, that means that St. Stephen, where it appears they're going to double in size, would be, I think, a whole new election. St. Andrews, I think it's a by-election because it's only adding 2, is that right?
Correct. We'll have probably some wards that we'll be having elections for in the LSDs.
Right, yeah, okay. In Eastern Charlotte, whatever that becomes or whatever the final form there, I'm sure it's going to be an election. Don't know what the final form is. And Musquash La Pearl obviously will be an election. McAdam, I think you're staying the same, so I don't think you're having an election at all. So, and then there's going to be one for the rural district, which is everything else that gets formed in that single rural district, and that's a new entity. Like nothing we've had before. It's kind of like a super LSD, I guess. So this board in January 2023 will be 7 mayors and 1 representative from the rural district. So 8 people on this board. It's going to be cut in half. So dramatically different, dramatically different bylaws. So a lot of work to do over the next year. The transition person team, they are going to be the ones approving the 2023 Rrc budget. So it's not going to be this board. I asked the question to Ryan Donahue. I said, what happens to this board in 2022? Is it going to be dissolved? What's happening there? And he said, nope, this board stays in place. However, they won't be passing the 2023 budget because, most of you, may not be here. So that was the answer I got on that. This person's also going to be responsible for appointing the new CEO for the Regional Service Commission. Now, I'm a little unclear on this one. I understand that, St. John, Fredericton, and Moncton regions are getting even a bigger mandate than the social component. I can see, where they're going there. I'm not sure if this means I have to reapply for my job and get hired by this transition person. It's possible. I'm not sure if they're hiring an additional executive. So that part, I don't know yet. So that's all that I know at the moment. That's my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Alice. A lot of things that are going to come up, I'm sure, over the next year for discussion and enlightenment. Okay. Strategic plan update, Hollis.
So I took out all the updates that I had in my typical update that I had in the package, and I sent you all instead a copy of the actual strategic plan with updates. As it stands, this is the last time this year we're going to look at it, and with everything that's happened with local governance reform, the other thing that it will be happening is in January 2023 is going to be a new strategic plan for everybody with all the new changes and things incorporated. So I had been saying up till now, we had been talking about an update to our strategic plan in the new year. I don't think that we need a complete overhaul of our strategic plan now because that's going to happen in 2023 and under a different kind of format. But instead, I think maybe, and this can be part of our December meeting as we talk about the changes that are coming up with local governance reform, or we can tackle this again in January. Maybe we need sort of an interim plan for 2022 and what that transition is going to look like so that, and I know that not all of you are going to be here in 2023. I know that, this board is only going to be half the size. However, you all have loads of experience, lots of input. Some of you have been here for a long time. So it would be great if we could kind of get together and just take a positive look at this and see how well we can set up the RSC 2.0, which is what it's going to be in 2023. So I'm going to leave that with you, and maybe that's part of our discussion in December.
Thank you, Hollis. Any comments, questions? Okay, Wayne McCrory now is going to talk to us about Regional Collaborative Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had our meeting with Sherry, and she gave us an update cost sharing agreement, the draft form anyways, which was presented to the committee for review. The agreement had changes in language because of what's happening with the local government. Nobody's sure what's going to be what, so there's allowances for further changes. The cost sharing agreements will be reviewed within the first year of implementation to make any necessary adjustments. The agreements are proposed to be a 2-year renewable contract. I don't know if we could do that this year, or we have to wait till after the elections and the new board gets in, so that'll have to be something to look into. It was noted that major changes in local governments may change how cost sharing is accomplished. And discussion was had about how the new ad hoc health planning committee might be connected to this committee, along with possible additional services that might become the mandate of the RRC. So with all these new committees that they want formed, and who knows where they're going to go. And we had no motions at this meeting, so that's my report.
Okay, Wayne, thank you. Any questions, comments for Wayne? Okay. I noted one already with Harvey leaving a 2-year contract. That because certainly Harvey didn't realize that they were leaving, and the 2-year contract. How was that going to play out? There's going to be some questions there, but again, as you said, probably further discussion in December. But there's lots of things that are going to come up, I'm sure, that we haven't thought of. Okay, thanks, Wayne. Winston next with the Finance and Audit Committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At our last meeting on November the 17th, Hollis presented a cost of living increase for 2022 for staff as determined by the average of the past 3 years of consumer price index for New Brunswick. This is the way it has been calculated in the past. The 3-year average is 2.3%. This is a budget cost of about $40,000. I move that the cost of living 3-year average of 2.3% be granted.
So we have a motion on the floor. Can I have a seconder? I'll second that. Okay, Jim behind me has seconded. I caught you that time, was that? Any comments, questions on the motion before we go to a vote? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by remaining silent. All those opposed to the motion may indicate by saying nay.
Nay.
Okay. Nay. Oh. A comment, Wade?
I don't have time. I haven't had time to look at the numbers, the 3-year average and look at what the cost of living index was for the last year in the province of New Brunswick. So I'd have to think about it, and I'm just not prepared to okay that at this point in time.
Okay, thank you very much, Wade. Appreciate it. Okay, we will consider the motion passed with 1 nay.
Okay, I'll carry on. Mr. Chair, the committee discussed the transfer amount to the reserve fund, market form of the estimate surplus in the solid waste silo of 1.5 million. This amount is due to the increase in U.S. waste along with capital projects coming in under budget. He also noted that the closure cost of the landfill site is the responsibility of the members and not the outside customers. Ken questioned if it could be set up that a portion of the surplus being used as a rebate, but with a percentage going back to the members. This is a non-for-profit corporation owned by shareholders, where the shareholders would be receiving a rebate. Hollis recommended waiting until after the 2021 audit is complete. Brian pointed out a green fund may be a good idea. Ken suggested the rebate be given back to the shareholders with the intended use for the money to be used for green projects and to reduce our carbon footprint. The option will be discussed further once the white paper is released and more details are known. Motion. I move the Board of Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission transfer $10,000 from the Local Planning Service Operation Fund to the Local Planning Service Capital Reserve Fund.
Okay, so there's a couple of things there. One is the transfer of the $10,000 from the planning operational to the capital reserve.
Planning Service Capital Reserve Fund.
Right, so there's that 10,000. And that's a little separate from the solid waste surplus of the 1.5 million. So take that 1.5 million topic to the side for a minute. We want to move $10,000, transfer that fund from planning operation to the planning capital reserve. And so could I have someone move that we've done that? Winston's moved that. Brad is seconding. Okay. On the motion for the 10,000, are there any questions, comments? Okay. All those in favor of the motion may signify yay by remaining silent. Any opposed may signify by saying nay. Okay, motion passed.
My second motion, Mr. Chair, is I move the Board of the Southwest New Brunswick Service Commission transfer $750,000 from solid waste surplus to the solid waste capital reserve fund.
So our second motion is to take 750,000, or the motion has been made. Can I have a seconder on that motion? Okay, Wayne McCory is seconding. Any comments, questions on the motion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by remaining silent. Any opposed to the motion may signify by saying nay. Motion is passed.
That's my report, Mr. Chair.
I would just like to make it just another comment on that, if you don't mind, Winston.
Go ahead.
We had a surplus of 1.5 million. We've just moved 750,000 of that 1.5 into the capital reserve. So we discussed what portion or what percentage of that 1.5 should we move into the capital reserve, and which should be left back to be left in the budget. So there's going to be 750,000 left in the budget, and as you know, that 750,000 we will not see again until 2023. So we thought after 2023, the reorganization of the community should have been accomplished by then. And we wanted to rebate that 750,000 back to the communities or the stakeholders. And that money then could be used for green projects within those communities. So that was the thinking on that discussion. If you have any comments or questions on that, certainly we won't come back to revisit that 750,000 until 2023. Everyone's okay with that? We thought it would be a good idea to have it come back and go into green projects and reduce our carbon footprint at the community level. Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Winston, for your report. Appreciate it. We have our last item is our financial report. And I believe you're going to do that one, Hollis, are you?
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Not going to go into too much detail here because a lot of what you just heard in our Finance and Audit Committee report when we were talking about our surplus and where we were winding up the year at. The details of that and how we got there are kind of contained in here. Probably the summary income statement's a good one to look at. The reason that we got where we did was because our foreign waste to gain is over what we budgeted for. We always budget that one conservatively, and this year specifically because our big customer was sold. But we haven't lost any revenue at all from foreign waste, so that's a big contributor. The other thing that's happened is all of our capital projects are under budget, and we are under budget in just about every category when it comes to solid waste, from personnel to repairs and things like that. What you're starting to see is a lot of the efficiency, a lot of the process improvement stuff that we've been doing, Mike and I have been doing for the past couple of years, is starting to pay off. The energy bills are coming down. It's just some reorganization of how we do things. So, it's just an improvement in efficiency coupled with increased income. So what we talked about at the Finance and Audit Committee is that we can't simply just have a surplus every year, like at some point, right? So that's not what we're trying to do here. We are trying to run as a not-for-profit. So that's where this whole idea of a like a dividend to shareholders, which is what you guys represent, it seemed to be the right thing to do. But we can't call it that because we are not-for-profit, but a rebate back to shareholders. And then I forget who came up, it might have been Brian or Ken, to tie it to a green project. I think it's a great idea. Nothing there is set in stone, of course. And we won't know the actual number until after the actual end of the year, and we actually count all the pennies and nickels. But I'm glad to see there's a recognition that we just can't simply continue to build surpluses and things like that. We just can't do that. I mean, I looked at the tipping fees of all the other regional service commissions, and they're all going up. So, unfortunately for Harvey, Manor, Sutton, they're going to be paying 120 a ton as opposed to our 92 if they go with Rrc 11. So that's, St. John is very similar. Moncton's very similar. We're a pretty good deal. But we're doing it because we're not doing stupid crap. We're, keeping it, as tight as possible, but also making sure that we're in a good enough position so that when things change or when the disaster happens, or that we're covered, so there's no issue. So that's kind of what we were talking about. And the rest of our budget, as I said, you can, if you have any question on this, on the financials, certainly ask me, and if I can answer it, I'll get Mark to answer it for you.
Thanks, Hollis. Any questions, comments for Hollis? Wade?
Yes, it'd be good if we could do a cost comparison, say over the last 5 years, to what what it actually costs us to process a ton, and so that we can see that and be able to show to the public that we've actually got costs down. Like, the total landfill budget from 2016 to 2021, it was this. And we, so that we recognize that we've got that large surplus now. We got to stop doing that. We have to come a little closer to what the costs are. But yeah, it's a good idea to give it back somehow. So anyway, if we could do that, that'd be great. Gives us some ammo.
Great idea. Yeah, absolutely, Wade.
Okay. No other comments, questions? Thank you very much. I guess that concludes our meeting, except for setting the date and time for the next regular scheduled meeting. January 27th, certainly we have our next meeting is going to be the December 14th meeting. But the next regularly scheduled meeting will be January 27th, 2022. And it'll be at 6 p.m. Paulus, do we have any questions from the public?
I do not at this time, Mr. Chair. Unless
Okay,
Rhonda
thank you,
has
Paulus.
something.
No, Rhonda's being quiet. Oh, there you are, Rhonda.
Sorry, I couldn't get my mute to unmute. No, I don't have anything. I can say if any of the municipalities are currently, as we're sitting, there is an ICS 200 course coming up at the Rrc in St. George on December 8th and 9th. It's open to anyone in our region. If you need someone to fill it or people on your teams to take it, reach out to me and we can get them signed up for it. There's no cost, just got to feed yourself at lunchtime. That's about the only thing I have. Looking forward, I guess, to the new challenges coming with the new white paper changes and seeing where that's going to take us in the coming year. But that's all I have, unless someone has some questions or anything regarding from emergency measures that I can maybe answer or get back to you with an answer for.
Doesn't appear to be any questions, Rhonda. Seeing no hands, comments. No. Okay, Rhonda, thank you very much. And we'll keep that in mind on the 8th and the 9th. I guess with that, we can entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Dennis, thank you very much. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great evening.
Good
And
evening.
we'll see you on the 14th, if not sooner.
Thank you.
Good night.